Okay, welcome to our latest live with John Kynaston, and tonight we've got James Thurlow, and I've been really looking forward to chatting to James. I've got to know you a little bit, James, at various events that you've organised or you've provided the tracking for, but I must admit I don't know too much about your background, so I'm really looking forward just to getting to know you a little bit this evening. And just like to say welcome to people who are watching live, and if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask James, just put them in the comments and I'll be able to drag those across as we go along. But just as people join us, James, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what life is like for you at the moment in this strange lockdown times.
Yeah, today, what have I been doing today? Well, I don't live that far away, so I only live about a mile away from the little office which I've got down in the bottom of the South Lake District. So walked into work today. Open tracking, which you mentioned, we've got partners across the world, and we had a meeting online, Zoom meeting, which is the first time we've done, with 5 different partners, one in America, one in Australia, one in Hong Kong, one in Ireland, and a couple of guys in the UK. So that was quite interesting. We've not done that before. So yeah, that's what I was doing this morning, and then I've been testing some kit. Again, open tracking stuff this afternoon. So yeah.
Yeah, I can see some of your trackers behind you there. Is that right?
Yeah, they're the PDAs, the little barcode scanners. So we've got some more of those in stock, and I've been testing those. There's nothing worse than having a battery go flat too quickly. So there is no reason when we get out at the end of this horrible thing that stuff hasn't been tested or checked or whatever it is. So that's my argument, really. Yeah. You can't say I didn't have time, really, can you?
No. Yeah. Well, for those who are watching, you may want to try and recognise what's behind me. I've got a green screen here and a picture behind me. So if anyone can recognise what lake that is, then there's a little bonus point. No prizes, but they can see if they can recognise it. So I thought, James, just to start with, hopefully people will ask some questions as we go along. But just to get to know you a little bit. So we've got some photographs that you've sent me that we're going to sort of put on the screen, and maybe we'll use those just to talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done in your life, both personally and events that you've organised. So the first one we've got here is a picture of you looking very young at the top of a mountain. So just tell us a little bit about this one, please.
That picture, if I've got it right, is a picture of me and a guy called Ian Nicol, which appears on a lot of our events, the events which I run with Open Adventure. And back in 1993 or 94, I think it was, I came to the Lake District and worked as a voluntary instructor at YMCA Lakeside. And during that time, I got my mountain leader and my rock climbing instructor's award. And I was taking kids out. And in my spare time, I would go running, walking. I lived in Suffolk, so this was all very new places to explore. And on that day, me and Ian set off to do the Wasdale Round, which it was a beautiful day. And one of the things which I learned very quickly is that when you do a round like that, there's no water on top of mountains, and we got very, very thirsty. But yeah, we took on this big walk, which we'd seen in a magazine, which was supposed to take 2 days, and we banged it out in a day. So yeah, that was back in 1994, 93, and I keep coming back to the Lake District. So yeah.
So tell us a little bit about where you were then. It's Suffolk, you say? Is that where you're from?
My mum still lives down in Felixstowe. I grew up in Suffolk, and I worked in a power station. I was an electrician in a power station, and I did Rally International, so some people know that, and I went overseas to Namibia and came back and thought, right, I want to get off and go and do something different. So much to the despair of my father, I kind of left my job, and this very secure job as an electrician at the power station, and set off to go and play in the outdoors as an instructor.
And presumably that's not a decision that you regretted?
Not at all. No, I did spend the following 10 years of my parents asking me when I was going to get a proper job. But, and I think my mum still almost asks it, some 30 years later of not really having a proper salary job for 20, 30 years. So
yeah. And then the second photo you sent is one which I'd like to find out a bit more about. And this is a boy soldier. So just tell us a little bit about why this one.
It's quite a disturbing picture, I suppose, in some ways, to put on your evening podcast. I spent this following 7 years working in emergency aid relief in war zones around the world, and it's something which I found. I'm not sure joy comes into it. I mean, I certainly felt very comfortable and found great satisfaction in working in these pretty difficult places. That picture was taken in Liberia, and it was a child soldier manning a checkpoint on a road, which I was travelling out on. And I guess that that was an important part of my life, and must have been around 2000 when I stopped doing that kind of thing. Got married, and I kind of jokingly say I got fed up with being shot at, to which there's a degree of truth in that, really. So,
So that must have been quite a significant time in your life there, involved in that.
I mean, I mean, working in those places is very difficult in terms of security and being under threat. But I found that I could do that relatively comfortably, and sometimes really hot, or Chechnya I worked in, which was -40. I worked in Liberia, Southern Sudan, Armenia. I've travelled to Afghanistan. Spent a lot of time in Kenya and Southern Sudan. So quite a few places around the world, which are quite difficult places to work in their own right, without having to add on the insecurity as well. But I just found I was okay. I found I was okay at it, and I suppose I got myself in a few pickles over those years, and I realised that statistically this wasn't going well, and cut my losses, and it's not a job for life, really, to be honest. So,
Okay, we got one or two comments, people watching. Jen Scotney, hi John and James. Claire Maxted, hi James and John. In fact, I'm interviewing Claire next week. Claire has a YouTube channel. I thought it'd be really interesting to chat to her. So next Thursday I'm chatting to Claire. Mick Brown says, hello guys. And Bob Wilkinson, hello gents, it's great to see you both and to hear you chat. So there's a few people watching, and if anyone has got a question they'd like me to ask James, then to bring that in. Now, I know another one of your passions, James, is cycling, and we've got a picture here with you on your tandem with an orange top on. I assume that's your wife, is it?
Yeah, that's Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa. So that picture is taken, we did a coast to coast in Scotland, from the Carla Loch Elsh to Montrose, and it's quite. I loved riding the tandem, a mountain bike tandem. I did quite a few events, back in the 2000s, sort of mountain bike navigation events with Lisa. We had great fun, and I don't know, we just enjoyed it. It was just a good fun way of travelling around and doing things together. That was just a great fun journey across Scotland, and a real highlight. Amazing place to travel across, and great way to do it. So
So would you be wild camping there as well then? You're carrying all your gear?
No, you can see. I think Lisa, embarrassingly, is carrying this massive rucksack, and the reason for that, I have to justify that, is that if I put it on my back, then she couldn't cycle because it would be in her face. So we were B&Bing it, and we stayed in a few hostels and B&Bs, and I pre-booked those in the week before. So it was a little bit committing. You kind of had to get on and do that day's ride to get to that hostel, but it was beautiful weather in Scotland as ever. Yeah.
And is it always you on the front? Did Lisa ever take the lead role?
It was always me on the front. Yeah. It's it does kind of build. It does. You need a bit of strength at the front, but I did get caught out, and it was a bit funny, really. We did one of these mountain bike orienteering events, and I did set off once from a checkpoint and thought, gosh, this is a bit light on the back here. What's going on? And I turned round to find my wife running down the track as I'd set off without her on the back. So yes, I have been guilty of doing that.
Yeah. I remember my parents had a tandem, obviously, before they were married, I think. And there's a famous story that my dad tells. They were cycling along in the Lake District, and they hadn't realised just how hilly it was. And then suddenly a truck stopped in front of them, and the guy, jump in if you want. And he didn't realise that my mum had been hitching for the last 10 minutes. she'd been putting her thumb out because she was fed up trying to cycle up this hill.
Yeah.
And
it's good fun.
There's another photo. I was going to say that there's another photo as well, and looks like more of an off-road one, and you're fairly muddy.
Yeah, it was a mountain bike orienteering event around the Lake District, down around Kendal. There used to be a series of events which we used to take part in, and yeah, we were quite competitive in it, and we used to do reasonably well in those events. And that we got involved. That's where we got involved with adventure racing and these kind of pairs events of running, cycling, and normally kayaking. And we did okay. We won a few series, and it was quite competitive back 15, 20 years ago. So yeah, we enjoyed it. We just had a great time. We got reasonably fit doing it. So yeah, I thank them for it, but kids came along and kind of made riding a tandem a little bit difficult. So yeah.
Yeah, you got twins, haven't you? You got
twins. Yes, one of each.
Yeah.
Job done.
Yeah. So what age are they?
They're 11 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
So are they coping with working from home, school from home?
Yeah, they're doing pretty well. Yeah, they seem to be. We live in a great part of the country. We can get out and go for walks, and there's plenty of opportunities to explore. I'm very grateful for that. I always kind of feel like I could be living in a tower block in London or something like that, and so I'm very grateful for where we live and the community which I'm part of here. So yeah, it's very good.
Excellent.
Kids.
Well, we've got some questions coming in, James, so let's deal with these. Bob Wilkinson, you two gents have much to answer for. Oh, John, for your brilliant videos, got me into ultras. That's kind. And James, you made the dream a reality with your legs in a day. Thank you both. A question to you both. If you were able to go to one spot in the UK and take it all in, where would that be? I'll let you go first.
I think there's a spot behind YMCA Lakeside, which it's called the Brows, and there's a hilltop behind it, and you can really capture the whole of the south of the Lake District on a beautiful day. So you can kind of see Scarfell and Kynaston and Fairfield Horseshoe and Kentmere, all from that little spot. And I used to take a lot of people up there when I worked at that place. And they always surprised at what you could see from what was quite a small hill. So yeah, very peaceful place, which not many people go to. That's probably where I'd go. Yeah.
Okay. I think for me, I was just thinking there, I would say it's at the top of Loch Lomond on the West Highland Way. There's a point where you climb up and you look back and you can see the whole of Loch Lomond looking back where you've just come from. And then you turn round and there's mountains all around you and you're heading up to sort of the more rugged ground. And there's the race director, Dario Melanagri, he died sadly in 2009. And I met him in the first 2 or 3 West Highland Ways that I did. And there's a post there to sort of celebrate him. And I suppose that's, whenever I go past that, I always think of that spot. And it's just, you get some amazing photos looking back. So I think that would be mine.
Yeah.
Okay, next one we've got. This is for you, James. He's loved the last 2 lakes in a day. If you could set up a brand new event, what would it be and where? And is it something you think about, or have you enough on your plate?
I'll answer the last bit. I've got enough on my plate. And that's why I've not done it. I mean, I've mulled over the idea of doing Dales in a day for quite a number of years. But to be honest, I just sat on it for too long. It's definitely been in the back of my mind. I've just not got around to doing it. And I think I've just got caught up on too many other things, really. So, yeah, that's the one which felt logical. There are a few more events which are coming online, which I think Mel Steventon and Joe's Lady Anne Way, I think, kind of, does some of that already, really. And to a certain degree, Felsman is also a bit of a Dales in a day. So, yeah, that's what I had in mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got a picture there that you sent of the, I assume it was the first Lakes in a Day in 2016, was it?
What pictures? What's that one? Is there a start line one?
Yeah, the start line one, yeah.
No, that's a couple of years ago. I think Bob might be in that, Bob Wilkinson.
Right.
That picture, is it the one, sorry, I don't know which one you're looking at, but is it the one where I'm shaking somebody's hand? Is
No,
it just me, or is it?
no. There's a group of about 12, 15 runners just at the start
So
line.
that I mean, the one which skip past is the one with me shaking somebody's hand. Is that group of people have type 1 diabetes, and they took part last year, and I suppose that's one of my more proud moments of them getting that many people who had type 1 diabetes, Bob Wilkinson, one of them included, taking part in a 50-mile ultra. It just seemed, it just seemed impossible 5 years ago. I just couldn't possibly imagine that would ever happen. But yeah.
Yeah. Actually, Bob Wilson's just replied saying 2018, he's not in that one.
Oh, he was not in that one. He did it last year. Then.
Yeah.
Okay, 2019.
Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about setting up the lakes in a day. I did it. I've done it 1 year and absolutely loved it. It's an amazing journey. You start at the top of the lakes, 50 miles, and it's the first 30 miles and the second 20 are so different, aren't they? They've got a completely different feel. So just tell us a little bit about the history and what was your thinking behind setting that race up?
I think I'm one of these people who looks at maps and is inspired by journeys. Northern Traverse is a bit like that. I'm not a great fan of going around in circles unless they've got a sense of purpose. I like the idea of an expedition, a journey where, shortcuts are not really, you could say the West Highland Way is a bit like that. It's got a sense of purpose to it. And I guess I'd looked at that map and I don't know, I just thought it made sense. And it's the kind of journey which I wanted to do myself. And there was something, I also kind of found fascination with the top end with Coolbeck, which bizarrely that top end of the Lake District gets cut off on maps, which I find quite almost a bit rude, that they literally chop off the Coolbeck Fells and Coalbeck's not in it. And it is just such a beautiful part of the Lake District. So to go from one edge to the other edge, that's what came about it. Why that route? I mean, originally I'd actually planned to go the other way, but I couldn't find anywhere where I could finish the event. And obviously when I first designed it, I wasn't expecting so many people. And it really came down to the fact that I've got the school in Cartmel, which made it more sense to finish in Cartmel. So there was somewhere where people could have a shower. I couldn't find anything like that up in Coolbeck. So that's the logic. It is the logic to do it that way. On reflection, I think we would have absolutely busted people if we'd gone from south to north. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people would have run the first 20, 30 miles and then absolutely smashed themselves up over those ridges and up Horsfell Ridge. Bizarrely, it lulls people into making it actually. So yeah, it's quite a high finish rate, which I quite like. Yeah. I'm not one of those people which celebrates failure by people, if for want of a better word. That's me. I love seeing people complete stuff which they didn't think possible. That's what I'm about. Yeah.
Well, another year I did it. The weather was amazing. We had beautiful blue skies, and it was just such a tremendous, And I took a video diary, and some of the pictures and videos were brilliant. But the next 2 years have been anything but, haven't they? They've been really tough weather.
It just became. I think it became like lake in a day. Yeah. Was the kind of joke. There were definitely challenging times. I think the one a couple of years ago where we actually paused the event for a brief moment when it was a BMW floated down the road past the marshal, and and I just thought, right, we've got to stop this. This is just like we've got to reroute this around this little bridge. It wasn't great, but I've got some great people who help me out on events and who really do make some good judgments, and I'm not afraid to tell me as well, which I think is dangerous when you kind of. You've almost got that authoritarian approach that people don't feel as if they can approach you. But I've got some great people who are quite happy to tell me, look, James, I think we should stop this. But importantly, they'll say we should do this instead, which is what I kind of like about a lot of the people which help me out. So, yeah.
Excellent. We've got a question from Jen Scotney. Well, two questions. Okay. She's got a sensible question and a not so sensible question. So the sensible question is, where is your favourite place to run or cycle in the world, James?
Oh my lord! I wouldn't be Chechnya, I know that. Run or cycle? I mean, I've travelled a lot around the world, and I've run a lot in the world. I think the Kepler track, I ran along the Kepler track with my wife in New Zealand. We cycled the length of New Zealand before we moved to the lakes, and we ran all the great walks. So we kind of joined it up with a cycling between them. And the Kepler track is spectacular ridge which you run along down in New Zealand. The cycling's not so fun, but the running was great there. It's kind of really good trails to run along and great views. So yeah, that'd be my popular. Otherwise, I'd probably come back to the lakes.
Yeah.
What was the other? There another question there as well.
Well, the not so sensible question is, wouldn't a winter northern traverse be loads of fun?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think we've had our fair share of that in October as well, actually. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not stopping you, Jen. You can come and hire a tracker if you like. I'll be there at the end.
And Claire Maxted said she'd like to see a kid trail on that tandem.
A kids trail, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I think my kids could fit on the back of the tandem now, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
So they're getting pretty big.
Yeah. And then Claire's got another question as well. Which of your own events would you most like to do yourself, James?
That's a really tricky one. I think I heard Mark talk about this with the Lakeland 100, and I probably would be very similar. I think it's really difficult to put yourself in that place where you would want to run your own event, because you just feel like you'd be worried about what else is going on. I do think, in terms of event management, I think if you see the event directors busy and running around like a headless chicken and really tired, then something's gone slightly wrong. So hopefully when you see me, I'm a bit more relaxed, but I still think disconnecting myself from it and taking part in it would be really difficult. But I've done the coast to coast, and I've run that journey, and I really enjoyed that. So which would I want to pay? I feel like I'd like to do the coast to coast in a day sportive. I'd like to do that journey on a bike. I haven't done it. I've driven it quite a few times and I know the route, but I've not actually done it on a bike. So I probably ought to get on and do that. But I couldn't do it as part of the event. I just couldn't do it. It's not right. Yeah. And I get too much pleasure at hanging medals and shaking people's hands at the finish line. That for me, I love it. I absolutely love it. I feel a tremendous privilege to be able to do that. So, yeah.
Well, I must admit, I think when I finished the Northern Traverse about 3:15 in the morning, and you were the only one there waiting for me, so I was very grateful.
Yeah.
And then you sent me off the hill to run up the hill back to the.
Yeah.
No.
I know.
Yeah.
There's an evil streak in me.
That's right. And then Claire was also asking, have I got a favourite race that is on my YouTube channel? I like to do video diaries of my races, and I think the one I did at the Northern Traverse, because it was so long, 90 odd hours where it took me. I've really enjoyed that, because it was being able to sort of document the journey as I went along, and looking back on it now, it just gives me a lot of pleasure just to see the fact that I completed that.
Yeah, you did suffer there, John.
I did
suffer.
I know.
You weren't in your prime form at the finish line, Les.
No, I think I've realised in that race that I have a problem with my eyesight. I get this lazy eye, and when I get really tired, 30 odd hours into a race, I start seeing double, and I really struggled in the second half of that one. So I was pleased that I was able to finish it, but I think I've realised that things like the Dragon's Back, where it's a stage race, I think they suit me better. Because I can get asleep, I can reset my eyesight seems fine even though I've had 3 or 4 hours sleep, and then I can go again. So I think the stage races suit me better, and I seem to enjoy those more. Okay, got another question from Billy Burns. James, Lakes in a Day, what was the reason for the route markings after the first year from Ambleside?
Yeah, the first year, I mean, you could speak to John Steele about that, actually. We didn't have route mark. Well, yeah, we route marked a little bit after YMCA Lakeside, because that really was Narnia up there. But what we found was that people were getting lost big time, and they were climbing over stone walls, going through people's back gardens, and I was getting phone calls in the early hours of the morning from people kind of like swearing at me. And so it became really just a wholly practical thing that if I was going to make this event any bigger, that I just couldn't possibly endure this carnage of these runners getting lost, because it's quite tricky navigation, as you know, after Ambleside. And so we just made the decision to waymark it. I must admit, I'm a little bit, it's tricky. I think in the high fells, I'm not such a great fan of seeing lots of markings around, red and white tape and arrows and stuff like that. And there's definitely, I probably would side with some of the grumpy old people in the Lake District against seeing that kind of stuff up in the high fells. But I think it made logical sense to do that from Ambleside. So yeah.
Okay. And question from Andy Cole, who's a good friend of both of us. He says, maybe you've answered this already, but I've been lucky enough to be at the inaugural running of your two now classic ultras, Lakes in a Day and Northern Traverse. Any chance of a third before I get too old?
Lakes Traverse. The Dales and Days nibbling away at me. Maybe if I got a bit more space, open tracking's just getting busier and busier and busier. It's finding it difficult to carve that time in there. And the weekends, just find a weekend when, you could run that kind of event. I looked at it some time ago, and I think the only weekend which I felt like you could put an event on and get a reasonable turnout was probably the beginning of November, because pretty much every other time, maybe the odd weekend in August, because there's just so much on in this country. Yeah. I look at the scene across the world, and we've got these partners around the world. And without question, the UK has got the busiest event market that you can see in the whole world. If you look at SI Entries, Runners World, those entry systems, there's no other country in the world which has got such a wealth of events like we have in the UK. Obviously not now, but normally on a given day. We're very, very special here. So yeah.
It's interesting because both Andy and myself, we did our first ultra in 2007, which was the Highland Fling. And I think at that stage in Scotland, there was probably 5 ultras just in Scotland, and there weren't that many in the UK. And whereas, as you say, you think now, just 13, 14 years later, there literally must be hundreds, mustn't it, throughout the UK?
Yeah, it's very. If you're going to put an event on, you've got to do something pretty special, something different to make it work. It's not easy to pull it off and make it financially work, actually. So it's difficult.
Just a thought about this present time, James. Obviously a lot of races or most of the races have been cancelled right up until August, as far as I can see, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen after that. Are you a bit fearful of some of the races not surviving? I'm just assuming that races will just carry on next year, but are you concerned about some of them?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about Open Adventure. We just the way we're structured and how long we've been running the event, we've got an established participant base. I suppose my worry for open tracking is that I think we'll lose some of our customers. I don't think some of our customers will make it through this year, particularly if September and October get canned as well. Maybe the market needs a bit of that. It really depends on the event organizer and how they structure their finance. Are they reliant on that money for their income? How much of that stuff can they shut down? How do they work with their participants? I've made the choice to offer a full refund as well as deferring. Not every event organizer can do that. It's partly because some of the event organizers are using that money to live off, which they've already taken, which, puts them in a little bit of an awkward place. It's an interesting world out there. There probably was a little bit of an oversupply on some stuff. Probably a few too many events out there. But I think it will be a different place come next year. I also think here, if we talk about ultra running, I think there's been a lot of pressure, maybe I've felt it, to keep our prices down. And I think Shane, or certainly Shane or Mark said it the other week, all of us have made losses on events, and I've made losses on Northern Traverse and Lakes in a Day over the years. And the only way you can afford to make a loss is if you make a profit. And I'm not sure some of us have had that margin in there to cope with this kind of situation. So I suspect that prices will generally go up a little bit, and there probably needs to be cutting the organisers a little bit of slack because I just think some of them are just cutting it a little bit too fine. They go out there and they say, right, I want to charge £40, and then they try and design an event which they want to partake in, and they can't add all those, the food or the tracking or whatever it is which they want to do into that price. It just doesn't add up. So it's an interesting. I think some of the more community-based events like Felsman and some of those things, events, the LDWA type stuff, they'll be fine. I think a lot of them actually have got quite good reserves. They're structured quite well. But some of the events where the organisers trying to make a bit of an income out of it, certainly small event organisers might struggle.
Yeah. And does it help you that you've got the two sides of your business? You've got the events, but also the open tracking.
It's an interesting world I live in, John, and I kind of feel like I feel there's a bit of a privilege, actually. I think it adds benefit to open tracking in that I am a customer in some ways of open tracking, because I have an insight into how I'd expect an organiser, what they would want from a tracking. Conversely, I also see that I am a competitor. I'm a competitor of Mark, and I'm a competitor. I offer events up against them. I use the same participant base. So I trade very carefully when I'm on events. I'm there as open tracking. I'm very careful. I don't wear any branded clothing from any of my events. I don't tend to talk to people about my events. If someone comes to chat to me about it, I'll be rather circumspect about it, because I'm there to serve that event organiser and to give them the best possible service. But conversely, certainly with some of the smaller events where I've been along and they've had difficult situations with competitors, or there's a difficult situation coming up. I've been able to chat it over with the race director about what possible options there are and give them almost a bit of a helping hand. So there are benefits to it, but I think I'm very mindful. I do need to be careful. I'm in a very privileged place, and I get a ringside seat on all these events. So and I enjoy it. So
yeah. Excellent. I've still not got any comments about my picture behind. James, you'll be able to see this, but I've got a picture of a lake, so no one's told me what it is yet. So if anyone's we've got a few more questions coming in, so that's great. So we've got another one from us, a comment from Sarah Francis. Hi James, love Legs in a Day. Have run the last 3 races and entered again this year. Thanks for a brilliant race. So that's from one of your fans. That's good.
Good.
Okay,
good.
And then there's a longest question here. I don't know if it'll all fit on you. Okay, from Phil Owen. Hi James, your excellent trackers have changed the game for ultras, adding enhanced safety, but also the thousands dot watching following athletes in such a race. Questions. Yeah. What's the most watched followed race according to your tracker website? What's the most watched race?
It's I've got to be careful because some of this is commercially sensitive, I think. But what we find is that some of the supported events, so like some of the Hardmoors events, and like the Device to Westminster Canoe Race, they get quite high following, even though sometimes the numbers are sort of down to 200 to 300, because the supporters themselves are everybody's media manager. If you see what I mean, they're promoting it as the event's running, and they're obviously all watching it. So some of those get quite high numbers. I think, once we get something like, I don't know, Paul Tiani doing the Wainwrights or something like that, then obviously a lot of people will watch that one person doing something every day. To give you sort of specific numbers, quite often people are spending about 15 minutes on a tracking page per view, which normally for a website is normally down in less than a minute. So we get people for quite a long time, and obviously the Spine race definitely attracts a lot of people, particularly when Jasmine did it. There's a lot of viewers there. People come back repeatedly. So those kind of events. I'm just trying to think. Obviously, the bigger events like the Leyton 100, which we covered last year, that would get some big numbers. My trick is that when I'm looking at those numbers, especially something like, say, like the Dragon's Back or some of the multi-day stuff, and I look at my own expedition races which are put on is that you really want to see the curve go up on the first day and continue to go up during the week. And if it dips after the first day, then something's not right. Either the way which they're marketing it, or the way there's a bug or something like that. For whatever reason, something's happened wrong. So, but yeah, we seem to have. I've got to be honest, we've made mistakes over the years. There's things which have not always worked, but technology's moved on. Everybody's phones have got a lot faster, so they can cope a lot easier with stuff. So yeah, it's I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And I know from my perspective as a runner, I think last year Dragon's Back. My family and friends, they just absolutely loved it. And because it was 5 days, the momentum built really. And I think your trackers really added to their enjoyment of seeing how I was getting on. And the fact that I don't know if it was yours, but there was little videos at the end of each day, so they could see when I was finishing, and they could see me finish. And things like that just add to the whole enjoyment for the spectator, I think.
Yeah. I mean, no question about it, trackers are changing the way which people do stuff. And I know one event which I can think of that they used to have a checkpoint every 10 kilometers because they wanted to know where everybody is. And now they're struggling to get volunteers. And now they're kind of thinking, well, we know where everybody is because we've got these trackers. So do we really need a checkpoint every 10 kilometers? Well, we can get away with that checkpoint, say, every 30 kilometers because, they don't need to see somebody every 10K. So do you mean, so suddenly it's changing, without question, people are finding that they need less staff to do stuff. With the geofencing of checkpoints, they don't need to have somebody there writing down times. And, so for some events, it saves them money. So yeah, it's all sorts of, I'm not going to do the sales thing here. Yeah. People know what we do. It does its own thing. Yeah. So yeah.
Another question from Phil as well. He says, is anyone designing a pouch to be attached to the top of a backpack for the trackers? Saves a lot of time and tape. I'm not offering, but I've often had to tape them up. And I know it's a bit of a bugbear for you sometimes, isn't it? Getting the tape on right.
I mean, ultimate direction do a pack which you can put it in. Some of the Salomon vests have got a nice little pocket here which does work. It depends on the event, to be honest. If it's a long event, we certainly multi-day stuff or sort of getting above that 12 hours, then we need to get that tracker right on the top of the pack so it gets a good view of the sky. We've done a lot of testing over the years, and if people roll back 5 years, they'll know how much work I did on the testing. And we know that when people put it in their hip pockets or wherever it is, then the tracker has to work harder. And as such, it has an impact on the battery. Now, on a shorter event, we're able to do stuff which means, so like on some of the Glencoe Skyline stuff, we've been able to put, literally almost just chuck trackers at people because they're only out for 5 hours, and we can change the settings so that the tracker will, it'll work a lot better. So with the pouches, we looked at a whole load of different things. And actually, I got the idea from an expedition race in Tasmania years ago and seeing them tape it on. And it just works, to be honest. And I mean, occasionally it has become more difficult with some of the vests because they're, ineffectively a gilet with some pockets in it. It works. And whenever because sometimes we send out trackers in a box to an organizer and they hand them out, and you can tell immediately when it goes wrong. I'll have a look on their Facebook page and I can see pictures of participants and I can't see the tracker, and the organizer's swearing at me because it's not working very well. Well, it's kind of it's buried in the bottom of the pack. So there you go.
And his final question was, I think I remember you saying the trackers are always being improved. Do you think you've more or less got it how you want it now?
I always can improve stuff.
Right.
I can always improve stuff. I mean, right at the moment, Ian, our developer, is working on a new design for the tracking page. We know that we can do better with that. You tested. I've got that little tracker here. This little one here. I don't know if you can see that. Yep. It's a little tracker which we're working on at the moment. We've got another 10 in here. We're looking at, can we get those at a cheap enough cost to work on shorter events. They're smaller, they're a lot smaller, a lot lighter, but the battery doesn't last as long. Would they work on some of these more 12-hour events, and can we reduce the cost so that some of those events suddenly can look at us for doing tracking? So yeah, there's lots of things which we're doing, around improving stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've not reached our limit yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember last year it was the Hardmoors 55. You asked me to take the little one as well as the main one.
Yeah.
And I was very honoured because you said you wanted someone that you knew would finish. So I felt very proud of that. So thank you.
So you had to finish.
That's right. Yeah.
So anybody watching this, be very afraid if I come up to you.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a second tracker because I'm expecting you to finish.
Yeah. That's right. A question or a comment from Mike Churchard. Do you know Mike? He did the spineless. Yeah. Can I just say thank you to both of you, John for guiding so many runners with your race video clips, and James for organising open tracking, bringing racers and their followers closer together, being able to embrace a lot with dot watching from the comfort of their home. It certainly made my spine race knowing that was going on in the background, with them having an insight into my race, and I'm sure everyone else will agree. See you soon. Yeah. And I know Mike has got a place in the Lakes in a Day this year. It's his first attempt at the race. Yeah. Oh, it's just today, right? So he's hoping that'll go in. Got another question from Jenny Reese Jenkins. Thank you, James, for putting on such a great race with the Lakes in a Day. It's been a highlight of my running. I've taken part the last 2 years and I've always been so impressed by the organisation and support by your team. Weather is always a feature, and I suppose I enjoy the challenge of changeable conditions. All your marshals are wonderful. Is it difficult to get such a great team, or have you built a family of these over the years? And the main question is, I would love to help one day. What is the required skills and qualities needed to marshal for you? So there you go.
I think, Debbie, who helps me out on a lot of these events, has helped recruit some people. We've got a core number of people. I think, again, Shane talked about this, having a core number of people. And we've got kind of like a core number of people that come along to most of our events, whether they're cycling events or expedition races. And I can go to those guys and say, can you go and set up the start gantry? Can you go and set up this, can you put that gazebo up? And I know that they'll get on and do it. Can you go and run registration? I don't have to show them how to do it. So they're really precious to me, as you can probably imagine. The people, I guess I always kind of think, I think it's about having the right attitude, really. One of the things which I say in the briefing to volunteers is that, the participants are my guests. And I expect you to treat them as my guests, because I think sometimes, I'm sure you've been on events where you get that kind of marshal who's got suddenly that power trip of barking commands at somebody, and so I think finding the right people who are patient with people, for people who are sometimes very tired or forget something, or they don't take the shoes off when they should do, or they forgot to pick up their rucksack, or I don't know, wherever it is. It's having the right people, the right attitude, so with a bit of patience, and thinking about the participant first, actually, rather than themselves.
Yeah.
So it might sound simple, but quite often people come to me with their luggage, and really this is not the place to be unloading that. To be honest, it's not the right time.
Yeah. So. And are most of your team runners themselves, do you think? They've done events and then...
I think it's a real mixture. We do get that kind of career volunteer. Do you mean people which just love it and have got with it? We also have people which do take part in events, and there's a few people which I can think of which, who can't run anymore or can't do something anymore, and so it's their opportunity to engage with that. I mean, one of the things which I haven't really said is that one of the reasons why I like this work is that the participants are some of the best people in the world. Their value for life is in what they're doing, not what they've got. And you can think of no better people to spend time around than some of these participants. And so we get volunteers who want to be part of that, who want to spend that time on the same as you've seen on the Dragon's Back and on the Northern Traverse and on the Itera. So it's a tremendous amount of fun. but it can also, it's not a jolly. It's not just a social thing to sit around there and drink. It's about helping these participants and achieve something. So yeah. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Excites people. So come and give us a shout.
Yeah, I was just reminded as well. I remember one of the best bits of advice I've heard you give to marshals as well at checkpoints is if someone comes into a checkpoint and they say like the Northern Traverse particularly, and they want to give up, you often tell them to go and have a sleep, have some food, and then the other great tip you give is encourage them to go out for a kilometre or a mile. And then if they really want to give up, come back. But most times, once they've got a mile, they think, well, I might as well keep going.
Yes, even though it's another 40 miles.
Yeah.
Logic dispenses. Yes. I mean, we do give quite generous cut-offs, but I think people regret it and they appreciate it. I think sometimes, I don't know, Filmsman has got those buses like sitting there, right there, ready for you to climb in. I think sometimes they can be a little bit too easy to pull out of some events, and it takes a degree of resolve. I think people regret it sometimes if they just stopped, had something to eat, got some sleep, walked out the door, right, and then if they really just can't do it, then turn around. So yeah.
We've got a couple of comments about the picture. Andy Cole says, is it Ennerdale near Angler's Crag? And Mick Brown, is the picture of Ennerdale water? And they're both right. And this was taken on my recce run when I did the Northern Traverse. And it was the snow on the hills. And that was the one where I got caught out, and I was trying to climb up this ice slab really, and fell back down, and had to go back. And Dave
I remember watching the tracker on that.
Yeah, that's right. And Dave Troman, my friend, I was going to stay with him in Keswick, and he came and picked me up early. So that was a challenging one. I've got some final questions I wanted to ask you, just quick fire questions. But I wanted to know just a little bit about the Northern Traverse, because I think as a runner, it's a logistic challenge to sort of organise yourself. But for a race organiser, when you've got people over, 4 days, and you've got 4 main checkpoints, and we each had to have 2 different drop bags because they were taken to different points. So just tell us a little bit about what it must be like to organise a race like the Northern Traverse that's 190 miles.
I've mentioned a little bit about the fact that I do expedition adventure races, which involve bikes and boats and stuff, which is almost a similar number of people. So in some ways this is simpler. It is a logistical exercise. I talked about being involved with aid work overseas, and it's just moving bags, but it's about taking it seriously, and it's about that every bag is important. You getting to a checkpoint and your bag not being there could be the end of your race, so I think it's about seeing the gravitas and the importance of it, and just putting enough logistical support and people in there to make those events happen. Not too much, because volunteers are not free. Anybody tells you a volunteer's free, they're not free, because I don't. As soon as a volunteer comes on my event, I want to. They shouldn't have to pay anything to be there. So that doesn't sit well with me. So they do cost money, but I kind of want. That's how I kind of run the events, to make sure it's comfortable for everybody. And they should be able to get sleep, and should be able to make it across. So logistically, it works. I also think the expectations from the participants, so we've had a few people criticising the whole 2-bag thing, and if anybody's interested, they'll find out about it. But we just couldn't do it unless we did that 2-bag thing. It's just, we would have to have a personal concierge for every runner to get their bags to every checkpoint. It just wouldn't work. And occasionally we haven't got the last bag to the finish before the runners got there, type thing. But we set that out in the briefing notes that may be slightly delayed. But I think it's, I quite enjoy it. I don't find it too stressful, that part of it.
I must admit, as someone who's done the race,
I've had vehicles run out of fuel. I've had people just get, they're not planning their sleep very well, and then suddenly we have to find someone else to drive a van and all that kind of stuff. But again, you can plan for these things. You should expect that something's not going to work well. So you've got to have that capacity to cope with that. So
Well, I was just going to say, I think as someone who's done the race, I was so impressed with the way it worked. Every time I got there, the bag was there. I think for me the hardest thing was once I'd finished the race, my feet were in a bit of a state, and I had 4 trains to get back to Paisley in Scotland.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to carry two massive drop bags and a rucksack. Oh, I was struggling. And there was one train station where I had to, go up the steps, across the top, and back down the other side. And I've just travelled 190 miles, and then I was walking like I was 90-year-old with these 3 bags.
I mean, the finish areas on a lot of our events do resemble a care home sometimes, don't they? Really, it's a bit of a race for the biscuits kind of thing. It's quite hilarious, really.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I would certainly recommend the Northern Traverse if you want a real adventure. To be able to run from one side of the country to the other. Over such amazing national parks and routes, it's just incredible. I would certainly recommend it. Yeah. Okay, James.
I was just going to say, I mean, as you know, I did the route myself, and I remember suggesting it to a few people, and I'm like, nah, it's just too far. And I remember sort of thinking, I'm not sure it's going to work. Maybe it's just a bit of a silly idea. And so I mean, it's tremendous to see 125 people entered this year. Sadly, it's not run, but hopefully we'll get more next year. I mean, that's great. When I think back, and I was not sure it would come off. There was a risk there. It was definitely a risk.
Yeah. Well, it was worth taking, and that was good. Yeah, it was a great event. Okay, I've got 5 questions that I've been asking different people that I've been interviewing over the last few weeks, and I wanted to get your view on it, because maybe not just from yourself, but other people that you've seen and things that you've done, because you've got a wealth of experience. So the first question was, what's the best piece of advice you've been given in an event?
Well, as an event organizer, sleep. I've just seen too many event organisers just kind of just blow up, and I think I've been in some horrible situations over the years, and I think you have to be on your game as an event organizer, and I think it's really important that you get your sleep.
Yep. Okay, before we have the next question, just got a comment from Rob Hopkins. I ran with Rob quite a bit when we did it 2 years ago. And he said, "Hi, John and James. The Northern Traverse 190 was an experience out of this world. Truly grateful for the opportunity to complete such an awesome race. Thank you." So there you go.
That's great.
Yeah. The next question. What is your favourite piece of kit? So you can have anything you want. What would be your favourite piece, do you think, for yourself?
My favourite piece of kit is my insulin pump, because it keeps me alive.
Right. Yeah.
Which is kind of attached to me. It's wired onto me. There's always a little bit of tube in this little device which keeps me alive.
Yeah.
And it kind of helps me just get through the day. I can help me manage my diabetes.
Yeah.
So without it, I'd really struggle to do the work which I do.
Yeah. I watched the video that you sent, which is how when you did the Northern Traverse, you did it the other way, didn't you? You started at St. B, Robin Hood's Bay, and went the other way. And there's a bit in there where it shows you your insulin attachment there, and it's obviously it's been a game changer for you, really, hasn't it?
Yes, and for many of those people on that start line at Lakes and Day have got insulin pumps, and it does really make a big difference. It's still hard to do it, and that's why I'm tremendously proud of those people to manage and to do that 50 miles, especially on that awful weekend in 2018.
Yeah. Okay, question 3. What is your go-to food in a long event? If you're doing something like the Northern Traverse or one of these long ones, have you got a particular food that you know works for you?
Yeah, a latte and a pan of chocolate.
Yeah. I remember.
I'm not competing.
Yeah. I remember at the start of the Northern Traverse, I was saying there, how are you feeling? So I'm fine. Once you've all started, I'm off for my coffee and a chocolate.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. If you could do just one more event, which one would it be?
I thought about this. I mean, as you know, John, I've kind of had to stop running. I've got a bit of a problem with my legs. So running events now is become really, really tricky with me. I just couldn't make the cut-offs on Shane's Dragon's Back or even doing some of the stuff, the Hardmoors events. I just can't get around quick enough. I'm struggling to walk sometimes. So I guess if I earn a dream ticket, I feel like back in 1993, that picture you showed right at the beginning of me on Scarfell, I remember going into Pete Bland Sports and I bought a little green book and it was about the Bob Graham Round. So I would have been 23 and I kind of missed my opportunity then to go and do it because I probably was fit enough to do it. So I guess I wished I'd gone and done the Bob Graham Round then. One day maybe I can try and do it, but I'd have to take a lot longer than 24 hours to do it, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And the final question I've got is, do you have a mantra to keep you going when things get tough?
I've been through worse. So yeah, wherever I'm going through it, I've been through a lot worse. So it can't be as bad as what I've been through before.
Okay. And we've got a final comment from Mark Cavosso. I've always been glad I met James at Loughborough in 2013. I then did the Coast to Coast in 2014 and 2016. So for my 30th anniversary of a Type 1, I've decided to do Lakes in a Day this year. Hope to see you in October.
Yeah, it's a great story. I mean, it's just some amazing Type 1s which I bumped into. If I go back to that video which you just you watched, and I remember chatting to somebody, and I didn't know anybody with Type 1 diabetes, maybe up to 4 or 5 people who'd run anything more than a marathon. So to see people like Mark, cycle across country and come and take on the Lakes in a Day, and the 40 other people which I've had do that event with Type 1 diabetes is, it's probably one of my more proud moments, really.
Yeah, well, congratulations. Just want to mention that on Thursday I'm speaking to Gary Tomsett. Gary organises, is very involved in the Dragon's Back and the Cape Wrath, and does all the route planning, doesn't he? So it's be really interesting to chat to him. And next Tuesday night, I'm speaking to Karen Nash. And then next Thursday, actually at lunchtime, 12 o'clock, to Claire Maxted. So I've got some more interviews lined up. But I just want to thank you so much for tonight, James. It's been really interesting just getting to know you a little bit more and finding out a bit more of your company and what you do and the events that you run. And we wish you all the best during this time. And we look forward to being able to catch up again when we're able to get out and back on the hills. But as someone who's done some of your events and certainly benefited from your trackers, I just want to say, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for all the hard work you do. We all really appreciate it.
Likewise, John. It's been great to see some of your films, and it's great to see your events. You always bring a smile to my face.
Good. Okay, so and thank you to those that are watching live. There's been quite a few that have been watching, and thanks for your questions. And those that are watching later on, thank you too for joining us and finding out a bit more. So we'll say good night for now, and we'll catch up again soon. So bye from us.